Guys, let's move on. We've got we do this. It's time now. We do this almost every week, and it's fan question time. And personally, this is one of my favorite segments on the show, just because Bengals fans are known as a very cynical group that waits for the other shoe to drop. Always wanting, always thinking that something bad is coming around the corner. Anytime something good happens to the team, I hate to say it, they're often right, they're often correct, but I love hearing from the listeners of this show and Bengals fans, because they are very well versed in a lot of different areas in the team, the draft, all of that, and that's what this week kind of centers around. I got an email this week, guys, and I'm just going to kind of paraphrase and give you the topic. The listener or the reader was Zach Williams, and he asked about Oklahoma running back Joe Mixon. And for those of you who don't know, Joe Mixon is one of those super talented but troubled guys who was seen on camera. Many people have seen it at this point, seen on camera punching a young woman in the face, knocking her out. I believe he broke her jaw. Very ugly stuff. Talented guy. He's going to obviously fall down draft boards. Who knows how far? That those are always things that get to be weird on draft weekend. He could end up being a Burfict type of guy. And I mean, not comparing what Burfict's issues were to Mixon, because Burfict's were more conditioning and drills and poor times. This kid's got this baggage, and as we all know with these domestic violence things, as awful of a charge as that is, and an act as that is, when you happen to see it visually, it's awful. So Scott, I'm going to start with you. I don't know how much you know about Joe Mixon aside from this issue. I think talent-wise, he probably would have, had this not happened, he probably would have been a shoe-in second, third-round pick probably. Now I'm thinking probably a day 3, if not undrafted free agent. But if you're the Bengals, you've got Adam Jones's issue hanging over your head currently. Even though it's not a fair tag anymore, they kind of were known as bringing in a lot of bad boys in the mid and late 2000s. Is this a guy that you think the Bengals should take a flyer on, especially late in the draft, or if he's an undrafted free agent?
I'm going to say I am a huge fan of Joe Mixon on the gridiron, not so much in restaurants. But I've seen – I haven't seen every game he's ever played, but I have seen a few games of him, Fournette, and Dalvin Cook. And from my perspective, and let me preface this by saying I'm not a professional NFL scout. I'm not a running back coach. To me, he seems to have the power of someone like a Fournette, but has the speed, vision, and ability of someone like Dalvin Cook. When I watch him play, it's like watching kind of like a video game character. Like, he just seems to have the way he makes people miss, the way he gets extra yards. I'm just like, wow, this guy is. I'm very impressed. I'd put him the top of my board as far as talent. Like you said, obviously he's not going to go that high, and like I said, I'm not an NFL scout. The red flag is obviously there. The one good thing is we're now in 2017. This incident happened in 2014. He has obviously nothing's happened since then, which is good. You obviously hope that we're not drafting Saints. We're drafting football players. Many of these players do have different histories and different things in their past. You kind of hope, okay, this seemed like a one-time thing. He did seem like he was apologetic, so it is something where, okay, obviously the interviews are going to tell you more, but at least everything seems to be on the up and up. Kind of like the thing. I know Josh Shaw's incident was a little different, but he had the thing jumping out, the window, getting injured, claiming he was trying to rescue a drowning cousin. And that too was like a one-time thing. It was a asinine, stupid thing, but it was a one-time thing. Moved on. Doesn't seem to have had anything.
Crazy that no one's talked about that since then. That's kind of crazy to me, because it's the Bengals. You would think people would be like, "Oh, they employ all these people," and no one talks about Josh Shaw. Not that it's like a bad
especially
thing,
especially with the recent Jones thing, that you would think they'd start dragging everything, dragging the mud. But if I'm the Bengals and I look at this, I don't know where you draft him. I without the red flag, I'd say if he was there in round 2, I'd pull the trigger just based on talent. I mean, and that's where the Bengals draft running backs. I mean, Corey Dillon, Harold Green, Eric Ball, Ickey Woods, Giovanni Bernard, Jeremy Hill, Kenny Irons, Pete Johnson. All those guys were drafted in the second round. So, that's someone I could see them taking. But that, as you mentioned, the red flag, some people are going to have them off their board altogether. But this doesn't seem to be a situation of a bad person who's always getting in trouble. Maybe he's a bad person, I don't know. But the fact that it was a one-time, and there was a second thing that came up actually where I guess a meter maid or someone gave him a ticket and he ripped it up and threw it down and stormed off or something like that. And they mentioned because of the previous incident, he had a altercation, and I don't know. I don't know if I'd consider ripping up a ticket in frustration a violent offense, but I'll think just if you get a chance to watch him, at least the games I've seen of him, I've been very wowed by him, more so than Giovanni Bernard or Jeremy Hill entering the draft. So if we ended up with them, I would love to see that. Where you take him, I think that's another question altogether. But as far as this fan question goes, I would say yes. Put him in bank and stripes.
Wow.
As soon as possible.
Okay. Connor, same thing, same question to you. But, you kind of look at it and you go, okay, Marvin Lewis is in the last year of his current contract. He supposedly wants an extension. We'll see if that happens. But he's in the last year of his contract. The team is coming off a 6-9-1 season, very disappointing. And this window, these guys all of a sudden at the end of Marvin, AJ Green is approaching 30. Andy Dalton's approaching 30. I mean, this window could be closing pretty quickly. The reason why I find the Mixon, aside from Mixon's skill set, and I'm going to touch on that in a second, aside from that, the reason why I find this question really interesting is because some may think the Bengals might be in a bit of a desperate – I don't want to say desperate mode, but they into the playoff picture and potentially finally win a championship. Does Mixon help them do that? Is it just going to be more of perpetuating a stereotype of the team? Or is he, if the value's there late in the draft or undrafted, is it too good to pass up?
I mean, I think regardless of what happens, if Mixon ended up on the Bengals, he's going to get that stereotype, and people are going to – it's just what people do. People like to generalize, and so they're going to group all these guys together. That's just why it was interesting to me that no one had talked about Shaw, because people grouped Drake Kirkpatrick into the whole Vontaze Burfict, Adam Jones thing like he's ever done anything. And I really don't know why people don't – like fans of opposing teams, what they have against Drake Kirkpatrick. Maybe he did something in college I'm not aware of, but that's always kind of weird to me. With Mixon, I don't know. I think it's, as of now, it looks like it's a one-time incident. Obviously, it's up to every team to figure out whether or not the guy has learned from that and moved on. And so if the Bengals, I trust the Bengals or any team in the NFL enough to believe that, or to evaluate and examine whether or not a guy has moved on from that and is a human being capable of playing in the NFL, a guy who's not going to make that same mistake. And obviously teams screw up, players screw up, things like that happen, but it's something that happened like 3 years ago, and not everyone's done that, so people are obviously going to get up on their pedestals about it, but I don't know. Everyone's done something dumb in their life, and the fact that the guy at least went out and apologized, I think shows something. And who knows? I think last year Sean Oakman was a guy who most people expected at least to get drafted, and he didn't get drafted. I don't think he's even on a team in the NFL. I don't know what his deal is right now, but I don't know. I think it's not like any sexual assault. That would be huge. It was just a misdemeanor that got dropped, and it's not gonna be a legal issue, I don't think, moving forward. And I mean, as long as you're not just going to generalize it or assume, I guess, that one incident is going to define him for the rest of his life, I really have no problem taking him. And, it is what it is. I'll be the first to admit I haven't watched a lot of his tape, don't know him well enough, but if he's a guy the team wanted to draft, I'm not going to get mad at them because he punched a girl one time. I mean, and that's, again, like, I think it's important to reiterate, like, I don't think that's just a normal thing to do, but at the same time, like, a lot of people make dumb decisions and have regrets, and to just be able to move on from that and say, okay, you know what, I made that mistake. It obviously was a big mistake, but I hope he's past it. I think he's past it. And if the Bengals or really any team in the NFL was gonna say, okay, I think he's past it, I'm not gonna be the guy who on Twitter every time he scores a touchdown at the team he's playing for, at Cowboys. This dude is a woman beater. He should get kicked out of the NFL. All this, like, it is what it is. That's how I feel, at least.
There's so much to this, and I mean, you look at it, and Ray Rice, a Pro Bowl player, granted he was coming off a really poor season at the time, but almost a perennial Pro Bowl player, hasn't gotten a job again. And what's it been now? 3 years, I think, since his incident. And what really sparked a lot of teams shying away from it was the fact that there was video footage, and not to demean the act without video footage, because it's a terrible act in itself. I think once people see it, it makes it more real. Now, I agree with you guys.
Video is like a huge aspect.
It's and I agree with you guys that it seems like it's totally in the rear view mostly in the rear view for this guy. I think where he's going to need to, it's not going to be about the workouts. It's not going to be about 40 times or anything. He's going to need to absolutely nail the interviews with teams in order to save himself an NFL career. And I hope he's genuine in terms of being contrite and all of that. He will need to show that to teams, and he will need to show that he's not a pattern guy, because you look at it, Carlos Dunlap was looked at as a red flag player coming out of college because he had a DUI in college. For every Carlos Dunlap, though, who has totally kept his nose clean as a pro and is actually perennially one of the best guys nominated for his community work and all kinds of things that he's done. He's a great story in terms of, let's not judge a book by its cover in terms of the draft and prospect. Now, DUIs are a completely different animal than domestic abuse and punching a woman in the face, obviously. But the fact remains that he was known as a red flag guy, and his turn has never gone back to that way. However, you look at other guys, and you got, for every Carlos Dunlap, there's a Randy Gregory who cannot stay off of drugs. There's a Josh Gordon, can't stay sober, can't do what the league is telling him to do in order to play football. And these guys, these are the types of guys that you bring in, and for a year or two, they give you that, oh wow, finally this guy's turning the corner, it'll pay off. And just when you least expect it, they revert back to who they've been, and the rug gets pulled out from underneath you, and all of a sudden you're left with a roster hole and a black eye in terms of PR, because these guys relapse into this type of behavior. Odell Thurman was one. Unfortunately, Chris Henry was another, in terms of Bengals things. Scott, I know you got something to say here. I just want to close with this in terms of my opinion with Joe Mixon. The thing that really intrigues me when you look at Joe Mixon, his yards per carry as both a freshman and a sophomore is a tad under 7 yards a carry, which is really, really solid. And then as a receiver, last year he had 14.5 yards per catch and 5 touchdowns as a receiver, which is awesome. And then also he gives you something in the kick and punt return games as well. He had 21 kick returns and a touchdown last year for the Sooners. So, I mean, there's a lot there skill set wise to like. I think he's got to, if you want to make this work, he's going to have to be a day 3 pick at the earliest, if not an undrafted free agent, in order to avoid. And granted, it's not so much part of running a football team is obviously having a positive public relations and a positive image to the NFL. But that's, I mean, obviously you want to win games, you want to win a championship. And if the Bengals feel he can help them do that, I would reluctantly welcome him on the team based on what I've seen. Scott, did you have something to add?
As far as Joe Mixon, not a whole lot. I think we pretty much agree with everything. I did forget to mention the receiving thing, which you brought up. Although I will throw in one thing with Ray Rice. I think part of why no one grabbed him, the video was pretty graphic, but teams do take a lot of second chances. I think a lot of it, too, is also he had, I think, 350 touches for a few seasons, was a smaller guy. I think kind of warmed down his last hill. He really went downhill as far as production, and I think the Ravens just saw a great opportunity to say, hey, he's on his last legs. This is a great chance to dump him, which kind of gets to like Adam Jones.
Right.
That, hey, this, it'd give you a great chance. But I think at this point, nothing's happening with that anytime soon. But
yeah,
I think it's worth pointing out Tyreek Hill, Ezekiel Elliott, both of them had that same question mark. I think it's a little different with, the whole like domestic abuse versus drugs, as in the sense that drugs is like with Greg Reed, Justin Blackman, Josh Gordon, those type of guys, it's an actual addiction, whereas these guys who aren't on substances at least have the ability to control themselves. So it's a lot more, I guess, controllable in that sense in the evaluation process for teams. Because you look at the Bengals, and yeah, Adam Jones has had his slip-ups, but there really hasn't been anything really from anyone else on the team. Even, like you said, with Dunlap, the last thing I can make of is Orson Charles when he had that weird thing. I don't even remember if he was on the team when that happened. So I think that from a strictly draft process outlook, I wouldn't say it's a thing that you can just overlook, but I think it's an easier task to manage than a guy who appears to have some sort of problem with substances.
Yeah, and to credit Zach Williams, who sent us that email, and Joe Mixon, he did reference Tyreek Hill, and obviously Tyreek Hill was a Pro Bowl player this year and one of the most electric players in the league. The Chiefs did a number of different things with him in terms of running back, receiver, return man, and he helped them get very far this season. So, and it seems as if Mixon, though he's a bit bigger than Tyreek Hill, it seems as if he has a very similar skill set in just that athleticism. So who knows? I hope it seems as if the issues that are very similar with Tyreek Hill, by the way, it seems as if he has gotten past them, at least for the time being. Let's hope, whether he's a Bengal or not, let's hope that these things are behind Joe Mixon, because it's a pretty terrible thing. And, if he is contrite and if this is a one-time thing, he does deserve to get his life on track and pursue a career, even with that egregious mistake he made in striking a woman. We have another question, Connor. And this one is about free agency priorities. It was actually sent to Cincy Jungle. It was kind of a broad question, but I think I'm going to hone it in a couple of different ways, and I'm going to say both priorities in free agency in terms of the positions of need, and if the Bengals. Well, let's start there. Positions of need, and then I'll go somewhere else with it.
Okay, are we going to assume that
let's say top 4 positions of need in free agency?
Okay, well, I think let's just assume that all the free agents are free agents at this point, just to make it easier. I think your position number 1 is corner. I know there's a lot of people who are probably going to disagree with me on that, but I think with Dre being a free agent, with Adam Jones' whole incident, even though you have guys like Darqueze Dennard, William Jackson, Kavari Russell ready to take snaps, it's still a position that you need 5, 6, maybe even 7 guys there, probably 6 guys I would guess, and Dre is priority number 1. And the good news for the Bengals is that you look at Evan Silva's top free agents list, Evan Silva of Roto World, who he makes a really good free agent list every year. He has Dre as the 5th best corner that's hitting free agency, which is really, really good news for the Bengals. You have guys like AJ Bouye, who had a really kind of seemingly out of nowhere standout season this year. Stephon Gilmore is going to be a coveted guy. The guy on the Patriots, I think Logan Ryan is the guy. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. Yeah, Logan Ryan, Morris Claiborne, and then Tremaine Johnson, who is the Rams franchise tagged cornerback. So I think Dre is a guy they really can and should re-sign. It seems like his Twitter feed is like really blue balling everyone because what did he tweet the other day? He was like, "Oh, when hard work pays off" or something like that,
Yeah.
and everyone's like, "Tell me if you sign with the Bengals." But that is a guy where the Bengals have no excuse to not get him signed. He's a guy you drafted, you hoped he would become the player you hoped he'd be, and then he's there. So that's number one. I say number two. I don't know because Zeitler and Whitworth are both like really good at what they do. Whitworth's obviously the older player. I mean, if we're talking the two players, you want Zeitler long term, obviously, but I think priority number two is you want. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you get a left tackle that can play long term. There's not really anyone on the market. So I guess your priority number two is right guard, and you hope that it's Kevin Zeitler because maybe it helps. I don't know. Like it's so difficult with all that stuff. I would say I guess priority number two I'm going to say is a tackle, either left or right. You have no. Okay, sorry. I'm gonna say it's guard. I'm gonna say it's Zeitler. Get Zeitler re-signed. Number three is gonna be tackle. You have Witt. You hope he re-signs, but you have insurance in Ogbuehi and Jake Fisher, and obviously you hope that you don't have to start both of them if they continue to play at the current. Notice I said if they play at the current trajectory they've been playing. Hopefully, I mean, Ogbuehi's gonna have his first full offseason in who knows how long. And then Jake Fisher is going to also have time to. They're both going to have time to, recover and stuff. Free agents of note: Ricky Wagner, who was on the Ravens, who was their right tackle. He's a really good player. Riley Reef, I think he was a first rounder. He played in Detroit. He's a swing guy. He could play left or right. Matt Khalil was kind of a flame out first round pick at tackle. I'm going to point to two more guys though, who I don't know. I've been thinking about it, and I don't hate the idea, and I hate myself for not hating it. Andre Smith and Marshall Newhouse, two former Bengals players.
Oh my gosh.
Andre Smith already back on the market because he suffered that injury and missed all of last year. Just hear me out because I don't think you sign him hoping he's a starter, but Andre Smith has the skill set where maybe he can kick inside and play some guard. I don't know. He's not quick, and so maybe he's not a great puller. But the Bengals don't really seem to pull a lot, anyways. So you have power inside runs. There'd be a lot more guys who I would hate than Smith playing a little bit of guard next year. And then Marshall Newhouse. I mean, I wanted to hate Newhouse so much. Like I wanted to not like him at all. But I look at his numbers, and he only played 10 games this year, granted. But he only gave up 2 sacks, only gave up 2 holding penalties. 4 total penalties with 40 total penalty yards. It's not he improved. He's not obviously not a starting caliber right tackle, but maybe he's a guy who you say, all right, Marshall Newhouse is going to be the guy he used to be, kind of replace Eric Winston, go back to being that backup right tackle. I don't know. I think your 3 needs are corner, the 2 offensive line positions, whatever order you think they are, and then I guess from there you look at linebacker. Everyone's talking about the Reuben Foster thing. I think if you look at middle linebacker and free agency, you won't hate the guys you see there. You have Dante Hightower, who is definitely not going to re-sign the Bengals, but Lawrence Timmons, rival guy who you could maybe poach away from the Steelers. Zach Brown, who had signed that 1-year prove-it deal in Buffalo and then just destroyed last year. He's only 27. He'd be a guy to look out for. People are going to love Malcolm Smith because he won Super Bowl MVP or whatever that 1 year. Manti Te'o missed all of last year with an injury. I would be wary on him. But Theo Moore, a guy who a lot of pro football, like I think Andy Benoit, who I've done some work with, really liked him as a nickel backer. Even Kevin Minter. Kevin Minter is another guy who should be a highly coveted middle linebacker. And then even Perry Riley. There's a lot of guys there. There's a lot of guys at middle linebacker who I could see the Bengals, second wave of free agency coming around and maybe one of those guys on the market and they pull a Dansby again. Or I mean, even Dansby. Dansby fans are very critical of him. He wasn't as bad as people are making him out to be. There's a lot of middle linebackers around. I wouldn't hate any of those guys being signed.
Connor, you're lucky I let you continue on when you even mentioned the name Marshall Newhouse.
I know. I wanted to not like him at all, and then I looked at his numbers. He wasn't.
I almost did the what's that show on ESPN that where you the guy with Tony Reali
sports. No, it's around the horn. You're like
around the horn. Yeah, I almost gave you the mute button when you did Marshall Newhouse. Good Lord. Yeah, I know. Tackle eligible, Dennis Rowland. That's right. Scott, your top positions the Bengals need to look at in free agency.
And I'm kind of taking the same approach Connor did, assuming the guys who are free agents now are free agents. Just throwing together a quick list. I came up with 5 in no particular order. I guess I would consider these to be the 5 biggest holes that I think the Bengals probably need to fill between now and the beginning of next season. So they've got 9 months to do it. So hopefully, 5 positions, 9 months. I'm sure they can figure it out. I want a right defensive end, someone to make Michael Johnson a rotational guy. Hopefully someone that can, get past the left tackle maybe once a game. Linebacker, we've kind of addressed that already. Someone to start and doesn't need to be a great guy. And Connor mentioned some examples, someone who could start hopefully over Vinny Ray, someone, and especially when Burfict's out, or when Burfict's healthy, to go with Vigil and Burfict. A second wide receiver, unless they feel Boyd is that second guy and they're not just going to make him like that third slot option, because LaFell's a free agent, so it'd be nice to have someone opposite A.J. Green. Kicker, I know we signed Brown, the guy who never kicked in college, and Randy Bullock, but it'd be nice to have at least one decent kicker heading in the draft. So maybe if they could get Greg Zuerlein, who I mentioned last time I thought was a great kicker as far as cheap free agents go. And then the 5th one, I would say just anything on the offensive line, because you've got, we've talked about Russell Bodine so many times at center. So I think anyone who's watched the show knows we think he's an issue. Oboye and Fisher obviously had tons of struggles this year. Bowling played injured and struggled. Zeitler and Whitworth, your 2 best guys, are free agents. So you did something. I mean, I'd say you can't go wrong with any position on the offensive line. You grab a center, that'd be great. You grab a tackle, that'd be great. So I'd say anything in that regard. So as far as free agents, I doubt they're going after the top of any one of those positions, but it'd be nice to at least see them make some, movement in some of those positions somehow. As far as their guys who are free agents, so some of the guys I mentioned, like LaFell or Dansby or whoever, I think the top one to re-sign, and I agree with Connor, I think it has to be Drake Kirkpatrick. This is a guy they took with that first pick of when they got from the Raiders, when they had 2 picks in the first round, and everyone was clamoring, they need to take David DeCastro if he's there. Oh my gosh, he fell to 17, and they take Drake Kirkpatrick. And all the Bengals fans are up in arms. What the hell are you doing taking a cornerback? This is absurd. But they obviously liked him. Even though they refused to play him for 3 years, they obviously liked him a lot. He, in the time he's finally got to play, I think he's been very good. We've talked about this in the show before. He can be a great cornerback. He's a big physical guy. He can obviously be the guy you use to cover the opposing big physical guys, the ones that your smaller slot corners just aren't going to get. So he's someone I would say is their top priority. And if they had to sign either Zeitler or Whitworth, one of the two, I'd say Zeitler, even though I think Whitworth's obviously left tackle, the more important position. And the reason I say Zeitler in that regard is he's younger. If you sign him for 3, 4, 5 years, you have that position locked up for that period. Whitworth's pretty much near the end. He's still good, not as good as it was last year or the year before. You're going to have him for maybe a year or 2, and then he's gone. I'd rather have the guy, I'd rather have right guard locked up for 4 or 5 years than left tackle locked up for 1 year or 2.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Is that it? I just want to say a quick thing about, okay. So Scott, you mentioned right defensive end, and that's the thing. I would love a right defensive end, But you look at, the guys on the market right now, and like they're gonna get big money. Like Jabal or Chandler Jones, JPP, Melvin Ingram, they're all gonna get major money. Um, and then you have from there like Jabal Sheard, who the Patriots were frustrated with and benched late in the season. Nick Perry, I don't know a ton about on the Packers, but he doesn't seem like a pure edge guy to me. James Harrison, who's 38, Mario Addison, who's 29, Julius Peppers is 37, Alex Okafor, I've never heard his name before in my life. So when that's your best free agent right defensive end, I mean that's why I'm so like I don't think Reuben Foster's going to happen. I think an edge is going to happen. And I'm kind of almost willing it to happen because, like I said, the Bengals haven't taken a player in the front seven in the first round of the draft since 2008. 8 years. But I just think that you take that defensive end in the draft. You have to. There's no free agents unless you're going to pay big money, which we all know the Bengals aren't. And I would argue they shouldn't pay the big money. I mean, Melvin Ingram is probably going to stay in now LA, not San Diego. Chandler Jones is definitely going to stay in Arizona, I'm pretty sure. JPP, we can make all the jokes about it you want, but he kind of has one hand, and he's a good player, but I don't know. He also plays on Dunlap's side, I think. I'm pretty sure. Maybe, no, he plays on the right. He plays on the right. But I still think he's going to get big money. And who knows? Maybe he doesn't fit what the Bengals are looking for. And I'm not talking about height. I'm talking about more schematic wise. I don't know. I don't see it. And not I'm not trying to knock what you're saying. I'm just saying that the Bengals really don't have any options there. It's the one year I really think where you look at edge guys and there's such a fine line between the great guys there and everyone else. And not just like everyone else. It's not like there's no middle tier, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's just top and bottom. There's nothing in the middle, which is it really sucks for the Bengals. But again, we've been talking about stuff like this every single year for the past how long, because their defensive ends have been Michael Johnson, Wallace Gilberry, Robert Geathers. Like they haven't tried to go out and get that right defensive end. So for whatever reason, don't know why.
Yeah, one guy at the defensive end spot that's an impending free agent, I believe, that to me is a bit interesting. He's 29 years old, but Mario Addison out of Carolina, he had 10 sacks last year. That could be a guy that could be, you get on a 2-3 year deal, something to that effect, pay him some decent money, and all of a sudden you got a decent rotation, open up the draft there. There are a number of the bigger name guys that you mentioned, Connor, but for me, I look at it and I go, aside from quarterback, how are football games in the NFL won? They're won in the trenches. I mean, it's an old adage. It rings true. Even though Dallas didn't get as far as a lot of people thought this year, they have one of the best offensive lines in football, if not the best offensive line. I think, and you could go 1A, 1B. I guess I'll say 1A is that guard spot and Zeitler, because really you look at it, and then 2 is offensive tackle and Andrew Whitworth, because you look at it, those are the only 2 players that were worth a damn on that line last year. That line had a terrible, terrible year, and those 2 guys were the only guys that really stepped up and consistently played well. And I look at it, and you might say, well, the Bengals now have guys going into their, if you can believe it, their 3rd year in Jake Fisher and Cedric Ogbuehi. Are you comfortable with those guys starting at tackle this year? I'm not, based on what I saw last year. Now, I have a little more confidence in Fisher than I do with Ogbuehi at this point, but I think Whitworth would bend over backwards if he got paid anything relatively decent to come back here and play for another year, 2 years start, and be that Band-Aid. Now, I know this goes against what a lot of fans like to see, what they want to see out of Marvin Lewis, which is let the young guys play and develop. But, I mean, man, Cedric Ogbuehi was awful last year, and Jake Fisher was not that much better, either at the left spot or the right spot. So I think those 2 spots, those are your 2 best offensive linemen from a year ago. And granted, Whitworth's at the very end of his career. He probably has only one really good year left, maybe 2. But I look at that and I go, if you really want to be a competitive and winning team next year, I'm not throwing my hat in the ring for Abwehi and Fisher to be your starting offensive tackles this year. And if you do that, if you end up going that route, then you need to have some veteran interior guys like a guy like Zeitler to be in there to help those guys out. So I look at that, and I think those are the two top spots for me. Edge rusher as well is probably number 3. It depends on you could get some of these guys that are those 4 or 5 sack a year guys. I like some of the guys you mentioned, Connor, Melvin Ingram, and Jabal Sheard, especially both of those guys I like a lot. Unfortunately, they're 3-4 guys. They're not.
Oh yeah, no, I love Ingram. It's never gonna happen.
Yeah, cost wise and scheme fit, and that's one of the things the Bengals really need to concentrate on this year is making sure they get proper scheme fits in free agency. But I do believe an edge rusher, whether it's a true defensive end, a rushing linebacker, whatever it may be, is also up there. And then you can kind of go, for me, I might place linebacker over corner. And the reason I say that is I'm really high on William Jackson. They have Darqueze Dennard, and though that contradicts exactly what I just said about the offensive tackles, he's there. Josh Shaw has done some okay things at corner. I mean, there's some talent there. And then especially if you end up keeping Adam Jones as your veteran, I'm not big on that idea. But if you lose Dre, you then have to keep Adam Jones, I would think. So I think linebacker needs more help than corner at this point. And, there's some good options out there too that Connor mentioned. Real quick, guys, before we
Anthony, just one quick thing.
Yep.
One of Abwehi. You sounded kind of negative. You kind of missed the one good thing he did last year, that he made us forget how bad Bodine was.
He what?
He helped make us forget how bad Bodine was because they seemed to race to see who could get driven back to the quarterback first.
Yeah.
So he had that one for him.
It's funny, those two guys, they didn't have grass stains or dirt stains on their jersey. They had number 14's jersey imprinted on the back of their jersey, just from so many times they fell into Andy Dalton's lap. Just kidding, Russell and Cedric, if you're listening. You guys are great guys. Let's just hope you play better. To close up the topic on free agency, the Bengals, according to Spotrac, currently are 12th in the NFL projected for 2017 with almost $44 million of cap space. Obviously, we know their deal about rolling over a bunch of money from year to year. The team will give its fans a lot of excuses as to why it doesn't spend a lot of money in free agency, but they're not good excuses. They have the money. They claim there's the rookie pool and in-season injury pool and all of this. That you never hear other teams talking about that. That's not the public information that they throw out there to their fans. The Bengals need to spend money, and I think their lack of free agency moves have caught up to them last year in some respect. Now, that doesn't mean get every high-priced free agent guy there is, but you got to be active. And $44 million, you can do a lot of different things with that kind of money coming into this season. Thanks for the questions, you guys. There was a bunch more that also came in our way. We can't get to all of them this week, but keep firing them at us. We appreciate it. You can shoot them over to Cincy Jungle. As we said, we are live on that website, and our content is on that website. You can shoot your questions on Twitter to us at BengalsOBI, via email, theobinsider@gmail.com. And, you can also get in touch with us through our YouTube chat or comment on our YouTube material. We look at those comments, and a lot of times there's questions in there that we like to answer. And we're also on SoundCloud and iTunes for you to download, leave a rating, and or comment on our show. We appreciate all the feedback and all the support we've received in this still relatively new show. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and all of the viewers that are tuning in live currently. We're gonna